famous rocker is part of an investigation by a task force that looks into internet crimes against children.
Gene Simmons is back, but not in the way you'd expect. Sure, he's still performing, but there's a twist that has fans, critics, and the media talking non-stop. From secretive VIP experiences to a solo tour that's quietly breaking records, the man who built Kiss into a global brand.
Gene Simmons, the rock star, has been entertaining fans for years. Loyal fans who have followed Kiss for decades. They are known as the Kiss Army.
Is rewriting the playbook for rock legends in 2025. Some people are thrilled, some are shocked, and others are questioning if this is pure genius or a wild stunt. What really goes on behind the scenes, though, is something no headline has fully captured. Stick around, because what we're about to uncover shows a side of Gene Simmons that few have ever seen. And it's a lot more surprising than anyone imagined. The unexpected tour. Here's something nobody really expected to happen in 2025. Gene Simmons, the larger-than-life face of Kiss, quietly rolled out a new project, the Gene Simmons Band. At first, it looked like a tiny side gig, just 5 scheduled dates across North America, with the opener in Peachtree City, Georgia. Nothing flashy, nothing headline-worthy. But the thing is, those 5 dates didn't stay 5 for long. Word spread fast. Tickets started moving quicker than anyone expected. And before you knew it, that short little run had snowballed into a 19-stop stretch that took him through both the US and Canada. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This isn't your typical Gene Simmons operation. If you're picturing fire-breathing theatrics, 10 semis full of gear, and that legendary Kiss dragon towering 30 feet in the air, you're in for a surprise. None of that came along this time. Instead, it's Simmons and 4 hand-picked musicians rolling around in a rented Sprinter van, hauling their own gear, setting up with just a few crates of cables, and getting straight to the point. The music. For someone who's spent decades being associated with the biggest, loudest, most expensive rock shows on Earth, this stripped-back version is almost unrecognizable. And yet, it's turning out to be one of the most profitable runs of Simmons's entire career. That sounds crazy, right? But it actually makes sense when you break down the numbers. He's not shelling out for union crews in every city. There are no convoys of trucks guzzling fuel while hauling massive stage rigs across the country. And crucially, he's not paying licensing fees for the KISS brand or logo. The result? The overhead is practically non-existent, and nearly every dollar flows right back into his pocket. The daily routine is almost comically simple compared to the arena tours of the past. Simmons and his crew roll into town around mid-afternoon, do a sound check, sometimes with a half-eaten pizza sitting on an amp, and by then, the meet-and-greet packages are already sold out. Fans are snapping them up long before the doors even open, and that's where the real money comes in. As for the actual shows, fans expecting the chest-rattling boom of Detroit Rock City pyros walked into something completely different. Instead, they got an intimate, almost bar band feel. One night might include Zeppelin's Communication Breakdown, another might throw in Motorhead or the Beatles. Add in a few deep cuts from the Kiss catalog, and you've got a show that feels spontaneous, personal, and unpredictable. And you know what? A lot of fans are loving it. Simmons even admits he's enjoying hearing himself sing without explosions drowning everything out. The takeaway is simple: less flash, more cash. By dialing things way down, Simmons has found a whole new lane that's both fun for him and wildly lucrative. But just when fans thought the stripped-down tour was the biggest surprise of all, another headline started making the rounds. A single number kept popping up online, sparking debates, fan outrage, and even crashing Reddit threads. That number? 12,495. And once you find out what it stands for, you'll understand why fans were losing their minds. The $12,495. Question: the tour itself was already surprising enough. But then came a price tag that made even hardcore Kiss fans do a double take. $12,495. And just so we're clear, that's not your all-in ticket price. That's the extra on top of your regular concert admission if you want what's called the ultimate Gene Simmons experience. Now, this wasn't your typical meet and greet where you shake a hand, grab a photo, and get shuffled out the door. Nope, this was marketed as a full-on day in the life with Gene. Fans who signed up got to tag along like a personal assistant. We're talking helping haul his gear, hanging out during sound check, sitting down for dinner, and even getting a shout-out during the show itself. And because this is Gene Simmons we're talking about, there had to be a cherry on top. You walked away with one of his actual bass guitars from the tour. Not a replica, not something signed and pulled from a shelf. A real road-used bass that he had sweated on just hours earlier. For some fans, that's not just merch. It's basically owning a piece of rock history. Imagine putting that thing on display in your living room and telling your buddies, "Yeah, that's the one Gene used in Toronto." It's the ultimate bragging rights, and Simmons knows exactly how much weight that carries. Naturally, this sparked a ton of debate. Online forums like Reddit lit up with people saying the price was outrageous, calling it cash-grabbing and over the top, especially in a time when regular concert tickets are already expensive enough. But Gene has never been shy about the money side of his career. He framed the cost less like a greedy grab and more like a reflection of how complicated it is to even pull off something this personal in today's world. Between insurance, liability, and the logistics of letting a stranger step behind the curtain of a professional tour, he argued that the steep price tag was simply the reality of making it happen. And here's the part that really shocked people. There were only 20 of these experiences available for the entire tour. You might think at that price point, they'd struggle to sell a single one. But nope. Every slot was gone within 2 days. That's nearly $250,000 pulled in before the first note of the first show, just from a handful of fans willing to buy in. What's wild is how differently people see it. Some view it as shameless, others as genius. But the truth is, it plays right into Simmons's long-standing approach to business. For decades, he's treated Kiss and his own persona not just as music, but as a brand. From action figures to coffins to comic books, if you could slap the Demon logo on it, Gene probably did. This ultimate experience feels like the natural next step, less about mass-market merch and more about selling excess, exclusivity, and the kind of story you can't buy anywhere else. One fan even joked online that it was cheaper than booking a seat on one of those space flights, and honestly, they're not wrong. It shows how Simmons has an uncanny ability to figure out exactly what his most loyal fans will pay for, and then create a product that scratches that itch. Whether you think it's ridiculous or brilliant, it worked. And really, it raises a bigger question. Why is Simmons, who's already wealthy beyond most people's imagination, still chasing new ways to cash in at 75 years old? From rags to riches to right sale. If you really want to understand why Gene Simmons, even at 75, is still out there finding new ways to cash in, you've got to rewind all the way to where it started. He wasn't born Gene Simmons. He came into the world in 1949 in Tirat Carmel, Israel, as Chaim Witz. His childhood was about as far from glamorous as you can imagine. He didn't even own a pair of shoes until he was 7 years old. His mother, a Holocaust survivor, eventually brought him to New York when he was just a kid, and their life there was more about survival than anything else. Meals were sometimes just rice, sometimes whatever scraps a butcher was willing to hand over. Growing up like that leaves a mark, and for Gene, it lit a fire that never really went out. He didn't just want to make it big. He wanted to make sure he never felt that kind of hunger again. By the 1970s, that drive turned into Kiss, and pretty soon, Kiss wasn't just a rock band, it was a full-blown empire. They sold over 100 million records worldwide. But the real genius move was in branding. Gene figured out early on that you could slap the KISS logo on almost anything and fans would buy it. We're talking about over 3,000 officially licensed products. Lunchboxes, comic books, pinball machines, Halloween costumes, even coffins. If you could imagine it, chances are Kiss had already licensed it. It wasn't just about the music, it was about turning the band into a lifestyle. And that business approach made them one of the most recognizable brands in rock history. But here's where it gets even more interesting. By 2024, the band itself became the product. Pop House Entertainment, the Swedish company that also created the ABBA Avatar shows, bought the entire Kiss brand. We're talking about publishing rights, masters, trademarks, and the whole catalog in a deal said to be worth around $300 million. The plan? To launch digital Kiss avatars by 2027, meaning fans will be able to see live Kiss shows long after Gene, Paul, and the rest of the band have retired. Most people, after cashing out a deal like that, would probably think about slowing down, maybe buy a yacht, disappear to an island, and enjoy the fruits of their work. But Gene? He did the opposite. He trademarked his solo demon persona and went right back on the road. It's the same hustle, just repackaged for a new era. That hunger from his childhood never really went away. It still fuels everything he does, from small club tours to pricey fan packages. Of course, with Gene, that constant grind usually comes with something else: headlines. Because if there's one thing you can always count on, it's that controversy is never far behind. Controversy is the middle name. If there's one thing you can count on with Gene Simmons, it's that headlines seem to follow him around like a shadow. Some artists spend their careers trying to avoid scandal, but with Gene, it feels like he either doesn't mind or he actually knows how to use it to his advantage. Over the years, he's said and done things that would have ended most people's careers, but instead, he somehow comes out of it with more attention than before. Think back to 2018, when he made an offhand remark about people struggling with depression. It was careless and offensive, and the backlash was instant. Thousands signed petitions calling for his visa to be revoked in Australia, and the controversy dominated rock forums and mainstream outlets alike. A few years earlier, in 2014, there was a lawsuit from a former girlfriend who accused him of physically assaulting her by throwing a lamp, which once again stirred up headlines. And if you rewind even further to 2004, his reality show Family Jewels gave fans one of its most talked-about moments when Gene casually bragged about the thousands of women he claimed to have slept with, only to act surprised when teachers at his kids' school looked at him sideways during PTA meetings. The funny part is that, instead of hurting him long-term, these controversies almost always ended up boosting his profile. The pattern is hard to miss. The more outrageous the statement, the more press he gets, which leads to higher-paid interviews, more interest in his solo projects, and often a new line of merchandise that cashes in on the buzz. Fast forward to 2025, and he's still at it. During a press stop for his tour, He quipped that any band still dragging a full laser rig around the country clearly hasn't done the math on how expensive those shows really are. Predictably, die-hard rock fans saw it as a shot at Kiss's own legacy, and the internet lit up with debates about whether Gene was undermining his past or just being practical. And what do you think happened next? Ticket sales for his stripped-down club shows jumped again. That's the strange genius of Gene Simmons. He knows that outrage spreads faster than praise. And in an age where algorithms thrive on clicks and shares, every outburst guarantees him relevance. It doesn't really matter if you're defending him or tearing him down. Either way, you're talking about him. And in today's attention economy, staying in the conversation is everything. So whether you think he's reckless, brilliant, or just addicted to stirring the pot, there's no denying one thing. Controversy has become one of Gene Simmons' sharpest business tools. And speaking of business, that's where things get even more interesting, because Gene's empire goes way beyond music and touring. Businessman or Borg? Gene Simmons isn't just dabbling in a few side projects here and there. He's essentially running a small business conglomerate from behind the demon mask. His reach goes far beyond the stage and into a mix of ventures that most people wouldn't even imagine a rock star juggling at once. Take Rock and Brews. It's not just a couple of themed restaurants, it's a chain with locations in over 30 airports across the United States, offering classic American dishes with a heavy dose of rock and roll vibes. Then there's his cannabis line, called Gene Simmons' Money Bag, because naturally, it's got that bold branding you'd expect. He even holds a minority stake in a Canadian cryptocurrency exchange, showing he's willing to experiment in emerging finance. And just when it seems like he's done, he launches a film production company that's already picking up comic book properties, naturally featuring immortal demons. It's a little like watching a man build a personal empire, one daring step at a time. What's really striking is how hands-on he is. He reportedly reads every contract himself, highlighter in mouth, checking every detail instead of just signing off and letting someone else handle it. For Gene, the grind isn't about ego alone. It's about control and security. That intense focus and drive harken back to his childhood in Israel and New York, where scarcity and hunger taught him to never take financial stability for granted. And when it comes to the money from his stripped-down solo tour, the one that reportedly earns more per night than a full Kiss arena show, Gene doesn't splurge on yachts or private islands. Half of the proceeds go into tax-free municipal bonds, and the other half into established dividend-paying companies with a long track record. Not exactly rock star flashy, but it's a smart way to keep the money working quietly, ensuring he avoids the trap so many successful artists fall into, earning millions but still ending up in debt. It's a financial strategy disguised as demon energy, the kind of precision that has helped him maintain an estimated net worth of around $400 million. For Gene, all these ventures, from restaurants to crypto to movie deals, aren't side hustles. They're extensions of his stage persona, a way of applying the same energy and spectacle he mastered in KYSS to business. He treats each project like a set list, carefully crafted, timed for maximum impact, and designed to keep his audience, and whether fans or investors, engaged. The road ahead. What's next for Gene Simmons, a man who seems like he never takes a break? Once this solo tour, which has been wildly successful if a little divisive, wraps up in mid-May 2026, don't expect him to just disappear for the summer. In August, he's already slated to make a return to the infamous Sturgis motorcycle rally, which is a bit surprising considering the dramatic lightning storm fiasco back in 2015 that forced a stage evacuation and left fans talking for weeks. But Gene clearly sees an opportunity in the roaring crowds, the motorcycles, and the high-octane energy. And he's never been one to shy away from a spectacle, even if it's one he swore he wouldn't revisit. And that's not all. Plans are quietly being laid for a spoken-word tour later in 2026, which will give fans a chance to hear the man behind the makeup share decades of stories from rock and roll, business ventures, and yes, probably a few eyebrow-raising opinions along the way. Ticket prices aren't set yet, but word is that it could start around $250, which wouldn't surprise anyone, considering how fast his VIP packages tend to sell out. Then there's the tech side of things. Remember those Kiss avatars that Pop House Entertainment bought the rights to? Gene is already hinting at what he calls hologram sneakers, a way for fans to get a feel for the classic 7-inch platform shoes without the chiropractor bill. It's a curious mix of virtual and physical, merging a rock legend's iconic style with interactive, futuristic merchandise. And it could be a game-changer for how fans experience Kiss in the years to come. If the last 6 decades are any indication, Gene Simmons thrives on doing what no one else would dare, and he somehow makes it work, even when it seems risky, outrageous, or just plain impossible. From stadium rock to stripped-down solo tours, from VIP experiences to high-tech memorabilia, he has a knack for taking every new idea and turning it into a moment fans can't stop talking about. Whether you love him or roll your eyes, one thing is clear. The demon isn't slowing down anytime soon, and the next chapter is guaranteed to keep everyone guessing. Is Gene Simmons a marketing genius, a visionary entrepreneur, or just the ultimate capitalist demon? We want to hear what you think. If this deep dive into the world of Gene Simmons in 2025 surprised you, hit that like button and subscribe for more rock news that doesn't sugarcoat a single thing. You should check out the next video that pops up on your screen. You'll be shocked.